Happy Monday, everyone. This is your first independent learning activity for the week. So you are going to be viewing this recorded lesson and also following along, completing some of your scientific method graphic organizer today. I'm going to show you how to get to that. So this is how we get to our scientific method graphic organizer. We've gone into Unified Classroom. We've clicked on Science. We've gotten to our class pages by clicking Class Pages. We've clicked on What Even is Science? And we get to our little home screen for the unit. Okay. So we have our learning objectives and our graphic organizer. So you're going to be clicking on Graphic Organizer. And when you click on Graphic Organizer, you need to click on that paper clip now. When we click on the paper clip, we have two options, modified or unmodified. Okay. It is up to you. You have the choice on whether you want to do the modified or unmodified. We're going to look at the modified version. It's going to open up and we see that we have some fill-in notes to follow along with. So you need to make sure that you're paying attention to this video and when we're in class filling in your graphic organizer. You need to click the pencil up in the corner. So we need to click on this pencil right here. That allows us to edit the document. If you don't click on the pencil, you cannot edit the document. Okay, and it does not look so good once you do that, but try your best. Now we have all of our notes. If you want to move things around back to where it's supposed to be in the boxes, you can do that. You don't have to. So now that you've gone into Unified Classroom and you have your graphic organizer pulled up on the other side of your screen, we're just going to make a note that these are your notes for the unit. So you have your notes, you have our recordings, and you have our posted PowerPoint. So this week we are diving into the scientific method. And we're talking about the first few steps. We're talking about the first few steps of the scientific method. So we're going to start with our first step, asking a question. So that first step is identifying the problem and then creating a question. So this is the question that you are trying to answer or the problem that you are trying to solve. You want to try to narrow it down and be as specific as you can. Okay. So a good research question is specific. And it poses a question for what you want to solve, okay? So you need to identify a problem. So we talked a lot about my plants, okay? The plants that I have in my house. And my problem is the leaves are wilting, okay? So my problem is that the leaves are wilting. So my research question is, where is the best place in my house for my plant so that the leaves stop wilting? So we need to identify a problem. And my problem is that my plants aren't doing so well. My leaves are wilting. And the question I have is, where in my house is the best place to put my plant so the leaves stop wilting, so they get healthy? So we have our problem and we've created our question. So now it's your turn. Think about a problem or question that you have. How can you make it so that it's specific enough to be able to be tested? So pause the video and think. Come up with a problem or a question that you have. Now that we have our problem and our question, we need to do some research. We need to gather some background information. There's several different ways we can do that as student scientists. We can go to the library, whether at school or out in town, and look in books. These old-fashioned things called encyclopedias. These really big books that people used to go in before internet was popular. Magazines like National Geographic, Discover, reports. So sometimes you might want to look at what another scientist did and what another scientist wrote and reported. You can use News ELA. Those are articles and reports that people have written. Sometimes you might be able to gather information and research and data from News ELA. The experts. So sometimes the experts that have to do with your question, they might not be scientists. Your question might not be science, 100% hard science related. It could be something else. It could be, why does Jell-O taste the same no matter the color? So maybe you are the expert, your past experiences, because maybe you like Jell-O and you've had a lot of Jell-O, but it all tastes the same and you want to find out why. So we use our research question and our problem to do some research and gather some background information. And our next step, now that we have a question and we have some idea about the answer to our question, now we have to work on that hypothesis. Okay, and we talked about this quite a bit last week. So we talked about how a hypothesis is an educated guess, and it's a little bit more than that. It's a prediction based on our research and background information. And our hypothesis includes what we think the answer is to that question. And we create that if-then statement. So we're remembering that a hypothesis is a testable statement that uses if and then. Okay. So one of the steps of the scientific method is creating that hypothesis that we talked about last week. And we're going to get a little bit more in depth here. So if we look down at the bottom two bullets, we talk about those two types of variables that we have and talked about last week. So the if part of the hypothesis is associated with the independent variable, what is being manipulated. And the then part of the hypothesis is the dependent variable, what we think is going to happen, the response. So if we think about dry mix, when we learned about dry mix last week, the dependent variable is the response. The manipulated variable is the independent variable. So that is what we are going to use in this first independent pre-recorded video lesson, we talked about the first 3 steps of the scientific method, identifying the problem and creating a research question, doing some research, doing some background information, gathering some data. And after we have the question and the information, then we can create our hypothesis. So make sure that you go back and you fill out that graphic organizer that we have. For the rest of the class today, you are responsible for completing the first 3 boxes in your graphic organizer that talk about the problem, the research and background information, and hypothesis. When you complete that, finish all of the independent work you were assigned last week. This is also located in Unified Classroom. Okay. It is that activity 1, which is that discussion post, activity 2, which is creating hypotheses, and activity 3, which is observations around the house. Those need to be completed by 9:30. That is Wednesday, okay, September 30th. Your assignment today is identifying variables. I'm going to show you where that is. So we've gone to Unified Classroom and our science class pages here. We've clicked on What Even is Science? And then we click on Independent Learning Activities. We're scrolling down. And this is part of your homework. This is part of what you are assigned to start today during independent time and finish. Okay, you are identifying variables. When you click on the paper clip, there's only one handout. You click on the handout. So you have some instructions. And you have some definitions to help you out. You're going to read each sentence. I have pre-underlined the variables. You must decide which is the independent and which is the dependent variables. You are writing the independent variable and dependent variable in the space provided under each question. So right here, this is one variable. And right here, this is another variable. You have to decide which one is the independent and which one is the dependent. So all you need to do is copy and paste where it belongs. And you have 5 practice items to complete. So if you do not finish this activity, along with all of the other activities you were supposed to last week, this is homework.